In his private sessions and within this philosophy, Alexander utilizes two astrologically based systems to help us understand the differences in each individual and identify the ideal communication styles between our types. In this episode, we will discuss an overview of the human design system at an introductory level, touching on the fundamentals of what makes it such an invaluable tool. So now let's open our minds and talk human design with Alexander. Let's journey.
Wise.
With Aaron and Alexander.
Uncovering our authentic self
Through self-awareness, conscious communication, and emotional responsibility. One of the tools that we've talked about in all the podcasts up until this point that we utilize when discussing the frequency-based philosophy, but also you utilize when consulting personal clients, is the human design. And
Yes.
We're finally going to talk about it here and do a brief overview so people at home can contact you and get their report and their chart, and we'll be able to utilize this podcast to understand more fully what they're looking at.
Yeah, and this is it is just a tool. There are many tools out there. This is one that I grew very fond of very quickly because it does help you understand your energetic makeup and on a subtle level how you are affecting the world and how the world is affecting you, to really help empaths understand why they are taking on other people's energy and in what area, and how to work with getting better at managing that. So this is in combination with the Destiny card system, which is just a basically Egyptian numerology that they use a deck of cards for the language. These two systems together, the human design and this Egyptian numerology, cover such a wide range of information to help us in everyday life. I happen to feel that if you understand the vehicle that you're operating optimally, then you can expand and stretch those boundaries, just like anyone that truly understands the functioning of a mechanism such as a hot rod car, and they understand that from a mechanic standpoint, an engineer standpoint, then they can, within a more clear understanding, know how to stretch the limits of that vehicle and what it can do. And so that's what this self-development work is all working towards, to take what we've been given and to optimize the usefulness of that and stop comparing ourselves to others and truly step into this individual role and come together as communities and help one another rather than being in this competition. And I happen to feel that the very first step of this is learning about ourselves and seeing ourselves as clear as possible.
So when somebody has a chart that was created for them, first of all, it's based off of your birth date, your birth time, and area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And once somebody has their chart and they're looking at it, they're going to see kind of a human laid out with the energy centers or chakra systems and a bunch of numbers connected with things filled in and empty in color. And then they also will get a list of different numbers and words, and we're just going to briefly go over what those would mean.
Yes, and one other thing I want to say before we get into that description is that the human design system is a fairly new system within the last 20 years or so, and it's a combination of many systems brought together. So it's not necessarily something new, but it is including anatomy and the I Ching and numerology and the chakra system. So it's a wonderful system, kind of a combination system of things that have been around for thousands of years even. So yes, getting into this as far as the different types of people, there are 5 different makeups of people, and this affects our communication with one another. And those different types are manifestors, manifesting generators, generators, projectors, and reflectors. And depending on what type you are, determines a big level as to how you communicate with others, how you receive their information, whether you are designed to wait for an invitation or whether you are designed to make things happen with your voice. So this helps people clear up questions about their ability to manifest and why they have certain friends or know people that can make things happen by just talking about it, but they've gone through so much frustration. There's been lots of information over the past few years about manifesting and subtle energies and how to create more happiness and things in your life. And this podcast is about something very different from all that. It is learning to operate what you've been given to an optimal level and to expand after that rather than just looking at it from you can create everything. So Aaron and I happen to be the same type, and that is a generator. So literally for manifestors, they can just say what they want to create, and it is other people make it happen for them. But there's only 8% or so of the population that are manifestors. And so at the same time, it has to be understood that there's a very large responsibility for everything that you say is created. So these people, when they talk about negative things, they continuously bring that into their lives and create more and more of it. See, in generators, like I was saying, Aaron and I are, we know what we don't want better than what we do want. So ours is a process of elimination by sifting through and accepting what doesn't light our fuse, so to say, to get to what does. And some people can be judged as pessimists when they're really just generators, sifting through what they don't resonate with. And then the manifesting generators are kind of on a sliding scale, I like to say, between the manifester and the manifesting generator or the generator. And in that sliding scale, some of the manifesting generators are more like manifestors and some are more like generators. And that is different per person. And it's very interesting to now over 10 years of working with the system to see the different types of manifesting generators. They can truly be all over the place. But see, they can make things happen, but part of their discipline is to wait for the right timing, to stick their toe in, not go full-fledged. Lots of manifesting generators are burning the candle at both ends. They're doing way too much, and they eventually burn out and get stressed out. And then we're going to jump to projectors, which my sons happen to be. And projectors are designed to wait for the invitation. They find that their life will go a lot smoother when they're not busy trying to create and manifest things or to butt into conversations, but wait for the right invitations. And then reflectors are the only or the most empathic of all of the types because they don't have any defenses in the system. They're completely open in all of their centers. And so they are excellent at acting, at portraying roles because they can basically become a chameleon in just about any situations or anybody that they're around.
So each type has a specific communication style. Let's talk a little more about that.
So not all generators operate exactly the same, but each type has a general communication style. And with manifestors and manifesting generators, as it goes with the title, you want to approach them in a way to where you make them think that everything is their idea. So you approach them with more questions than statements because they are the ones that are used to creating things and making things happen. So you get through a lot quicker with them when you ask them questions or ask them their opinion to finally get your view in after they get their view. So generators are, as I said earlier, we know what we don't want better than what we do want. So if our partners or our friends cannot take it negatively when we don't want a particular thing to eat or go to a particular movie, we may not know it until we hear it. And so that's why it can be a stigma can be put around being a pessimist. But really, it's just as simple as someone saying, hey, do you want to grab something to eat? And I say, sure. And they say, what do you want? And I say, well, I don't really mind. I don't have anything that I've been thinking about eating. And they start naming things. Do you want Italian? No. Do you want Japanese? No. Do you want Indian? Yes. Because I may not know it until I hear it. And so that's what works with the generators. With the projectors, they're designed to wait for the invitation. So lots of times they have a lot of energy that is vacant, and they are very influenced by others around them. And so they can shift and change depending on who they're around. So when I was raising my two sons, it was never about what they were going to be doing, but it was always, who are you going to be doing it with? It's always a who with a projector. And it's very similar with the reflectors, even though there's only literally about 2% of the population that are reflectors, but they are the most empathic. They are influenced the most because they have so many centers open. So you approach them by inviting them in. And once again, it's better than demanding things or going at them with force. They just start to shut down. So my hope for this is just even with that basic introduction of the different types, for people to understand that there are a minimum of 5 different ways that people take in and interact information from one another. And hopefully this will get down into working with parents, with children, and even eventually into school systems to truly, hopefully, get our systems based around how people truly receive information rather than just how we want to give it.
So next on your chart, you will see 2 numbers separated by a backslash, and it'll be numbers 1 through 6. And then 1 through 6. And these are the profile numbers, which kind of make up your personality. The first one being what you see in yourself, and the second one being what others would see in you and may not be as obvious. And then we also have the strategy, which is how we are to respond as our different types.
Yes, and with the 12 different profile numbers, these numbers go from 1 to 6, and this is connected with the I Ching for anyone that's familiar with that. And there are, once we get into the gates and the channels, there are 64 gates, which are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. So that's how that all starts to come together. But with the profiles, you've got, as Aaron said, one number and then a backslash and another number. My number happens to be 4-1, and Aaron's number happens to be 3-5. With the first number, it is what you consciously kind of know about yourself, personality-wise. The second number is equally as important but less noticed because it's in your subconscious, and it's more about what other people recognize in you that you may or may not agree with. So typically the first number is of a little more importance, and the secondary number is like a supportive number. So I'm going to give a brief description of this, just 1 through 6. And so the number 1, it is all about solitude and time alone. And that's very, very important for number 1s. Also with number 1s, they carry some of the highest levels of insecurity. So they can be seen externally as very strong and very good speakers and presenters. But inside, lots of times, those people are really, carrying a nervousness or an insecurity about mainly never feeling like they know enough about the subject that they are sharing. And so that helps to perpetuate them to always grow more. Then number 2 is known as one of the most supportive numbers. They want everyone around them to prosper. While they're prospering, they typically see, instead of competition, they see that we can help each other grow. The issue with 2s lots of times is they can get lost in their partner's direction. So they can be guilty of supporting other people and then for one reason or another getting dropped and left behind. And that's the ongoing story with a lot of 2s. So number 3, 3s are some of the most creative numbers that there are, but remember that restlessness comes with creativity. So when this energy isn't properly being dispersed, it brings in indecision, worry, and fickleness or poor decisions. So it's very important for a 3 person to make sure that they have a creative outlet, or the heaviness starts to weigh on them. Then the fours are basically here for the overall good of everyone involved. If you can view some type of institution like the church or any institution where there is a leader or a teacher and everyone is interested in learning, that's even our school establishments, that's typically what the 4 person is here for, to share information and to share information in front of large groups typically, and to be a proponent of that overall good for everyone involved. The number 5 has a certain level of social to them. They can normally thrive in social because it's all about contacts that they're making. And typically 5s can make contacts very well. The obstacle with the 5s are speaking their truth and saying it in a useful time frame. They can be very guilty for letting stuff build over time, and internally they really think that they are managing it or dealing with it, but they're really not. It's creating a pressure, like a pressure cooker, and normally there will be an explosion or blow up at some point in time, and normally the person that is receiving that truly don't understand what's happening because that it's been covered up so well. Then with the 6 are the visionaries, the typical philosophers, the artists. They can see the whole picture. They're very social people, but they can be, they like to be the one talking. They like to be the one directing the gathering, so to say, especially directing the conversation. Their issue can be from time to time finding a way to get other numbers to understand their vision because they don't want to get caught up in the details. Some of the lower numbers are more detail oriented, like the 1s or the 4s or the 2s, more detail oriented. And then the social numbers are 4, 5, and 6, where 4s are mostly about groups and people learning stuff. 5 are really some of the most social people, and then 6 enjoy social, where it's basically around them sharing the information. So they all have equal amounts of so-called good and so-called bad characteristics, and there are 12 different combinations of those numbers. And depending on your combination, tells you a good bit about your personality, both in how you see yourself and how others see you. And as far as strategy goes, that's different per person, even per type. Some people are designed to wait for the invitation. Some people are designed to follow their gut. Some people are designed to respond to life or to wait to respond. And so that helps with the detail orientation to know how to use your strategy when an awkward situation comes up. Mine happens to be, wait for an emotional wave to pass. And so with my particular design, it's always better to not engage right away about the subject, but to give it some time, whether that's a few hours or a few days. And as I go through the process of the different emotions of whatever comes up, I see it more and more clearly. So we will probably in future broadcasts, or we'll cover more detailed about these particular subjects. But for anyone that's interested, right away, of course, we do provide readings and charts to help people out with that.
Okay, next we are going to jump over to the visual side of the chart, where you will see the layout of the human and the chakras or energy centers connected with what we call channels going from a gate to a gate. So let's touch upon the chakra system, and if you want to just go over each one and what it represents.
Sure. So this is basically a 9-chakra design. The basic 7 You can visualize it in my sound journeys. When I do my sound journey through the chakras, I do a 9 chakra system, and I just add one above the head and below the feet. You can visualize it that way if you want to. On the chart, they are positioned a little differently than the traditional 7 chakra system, but they correlate very similarly. So the root chakra at the bottom is about your home life and travel. So people that have this, what's called activated, means that the center is colored and is putting energy out into the world. Then you can have a center that is not activated, and that means that it's white. But on every energy center, you have multiple what's called gates coming off of them. And you could think of that as support or protection. So it can be someone can have a white center that is not activated, but have anywhere from 1 to 8 gates coming off. But if it is white and it has no gates coming off, then it is what's called open. And that means the most vulnerable, the most empathic. And the way to look at this from an energetic standpoint is if someone has that root chakra and it is white and they get within, say, 5 feet of someone that has that activated, then it activates that inside of them. Similar to how a plug from a lamp just plugs into a receptacle and the energy connects. This is the way that we exchange energy back and forth. This is why you can get up and be in a great mood, drive to the grocery store, buy groceries, get in your car and be in a horrible mood and not even really understand why. We exchange energy, and this gives a visual of exactly how this is done. So I work with people in both privately with themselves, working to understand and grow themselves, but this is so invaluable with family and in relationships. So in my relationship consultation classes and working with parents with children, this helps to get a deeper understanding very quickly of how to relate to these people. So that root chakra is mainly about home life, and when it's activated, a person feels most comfortable at home. And then when it's white or not activated, they're the traveling vagabonds. They're the ones that really can call anywhere home, wherever they lay their head. And in relationships, right away, that is a very big caution anytime I see a couple where one has that white, one has it activated. The second chakra, just above it, is the sacral, and this is the creative center or the sexual center. So people that have this center activated, they are just naturally inclined to come from a creative point of view, to look at things less linearly and more creative. And it also means that there's a certain amount of sexual energy that needs to be processed. And when a person has this center activated and they're not sexually active and they're not being creative, lots of times this can be the cause for depression or being just feeling down, not feeling that zest for life. So it's important to understand that all energy that is present needs to be moving.
Next up, we have the intuitional center, which can also be called the spleen, and that's on the left-hand side.
Yes, looking at the graph, this is a little triangle to the left of the sacral. And this has to do with our intuition or how we utilize our intuition. People with this center activated or colored in, they have a great intuition about themselves. And that is quite a gift because I don't have this center activated. So I always relish when I come across people that have this, because to be able to know like a supplement or a food or an event, whether it's right for you, is immediate for these people. They confuse it by letting their mind and logic get in the way, but they always know what's right for them. And people with this center not activated or white, they have a very keen and sharp intuition about others externally. But the cost is that it's more difficult to see yourself clearly. So, in my work and in my private practice, this is what I utilize to help people to actually be easier for me to see what's going on. And as I'm hearing things, to be able to use my intuition in a way to help them with with what they're dealing with much easier than what's going on in my life per se. And I've worked with that for over 20 years to hone that. But part of once again, this when I understood and got this visual and understood what part of my intuition I needed to work on, which is an internal rather than an external. And so there are general sayings that whatever you see in someone else, it's really something about you. That this is correct around 50% of people. But some people, what they see in others is truly what they're seeing. So this really helps to get people on a right track that really want to hone their intuition and help that. Then on the right side of the chart is another triangle to the right of the sacral, and this is the emotional solar plexus. And so with that emotional solar plexus, it's very similar. When people have this activated, such as myself, we are on a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week emotional roller coaster ride. So the purpose is to accept a process and learn that when we have an emotion that comes up, there's a process, and if we go through it without reacting and without trying to fix it, by allowing the emotional wave to pass, we can see it clearly and we can communicate after that. And people with this white or not activated means that they are the empaths. They are the emotional empaths that take on other people's energy and emotions. And these people typically stay just weighted down by literally other people's junk. So this is a very quick and important point to get across to my clients when I come across the ones that have that really either way, but from an empathic standpoint, to see that white, typically it gives people a lot of relief to understand that they haven't just been carrying their stuff. They've been carrying stuff through their whole lives of other people's. Then you go above the sacral and you come to the heart center or the will center. And this is where that kind of balance between willpower and trust is started to see a little bit, because when a person has this center white, they are typically very forgiving people. But the problem is they have an obstacle with setting boundaries. So they can have a history of letting people walk over them or take advantage of them. But when this center is red or activated, such as mine is, it means that you come in with a very strong will. It means that you're basically good at setting boundaries, but you can be overly forceful. I call it setting a boundary with a sword, so to say. So, red-hearted people have to learn to take things with a grain of salt, to take a step back. White-hearted people need to step up their ability to set boundaries and to create that room for them to make proper decisions and to stand behind them. I know that with Aaron, do you remember, is your heart activated or not?
I think it's not.
Yeah. And so once again, this is another area where, he and I shares energy. And as we go on in future broadcasts, we'll be discussing that more and more, how we light each other up.
So next up, we have the GPS center.
Yeah, and with the GPS center, it is labeled kind of just how it sounds. It is our mark or feeling like we're going in the right direction. So I like to suggest that people that have this center activated, they do have this underlying life purpose that they feel pulled towards. And that is at different levels for different people. With me, my center is activated, and I've been on this trek for over 20 years, developing this path, all this information. Haven't really had a clear understanding of exactly how everything's going to pan out. But looking back, I can see how everything was connected. Even back when I did a job, which was custom woodwork work with finishes. And I got really deep into color matching. And then later on, fast forward 5 more years, I'm studying color and frequencies from a healing and wellness standpoint. So it's all come together. And people with this white, such as my sons have, There's a freedom in that. There's a freedom to literally like do what you want to do as long as you want to do it, and then go do something else. So for the white GPS person, just setting the boundaries or being stuck in a job that's not going anywhere, that can feel so frustrating. So there's a different kind of urge. There's normally, for the white GPS person, it can be this urge toward freedom. And for the activated or colored in GPS person, it can be this: the more that they know about their direction and where they're going in life, the more freedom they can actually feel. But it's two different types of freedoms.
My favorite is up next. That's the throat center.
Yeah, and the throat center is very, very interesting, and I've expanded on this with my own research and brought some of my own hypothesis after working with this system. So I've understand that this system has been written about by many books, and those are just opinions. And so I don't teach this system in any way except for the way that I use it within my work. And so people can expand on that and take it as linearly as they care to. But my interest is really how to utilize this in this self-development work and communication obstacles that we have with people. So with the throat center, people that have that activated are very powerful with their manifestation with their words. But remember, you're manifesting the so-called negative just as much as you are the so-called positive. So there's a big responsibility that comes with that. And then with the throat chakra not activated, such as mine, I've been asking most everyone I come across that doesn't have a throat chakra to see if their manifesting isn't stronger when they don't speak about it and when they allow the energy to build. And I've had lots of great input with this, and I've proven it many times with myself. I haven't really found this written in a book, how this seems to be a slightly different view of how to utilize this. But that has shown some consistency, a high level of consistency, that people that seem to have the opportunity for something to happen, that the less they talk about it, it kind of builds the energy and has more of a chance of coming through. And see, part of the discipline with the non-throat activated center person is that when they get around someone that has that center activated, it wants to activate it, so it makes you want to vomit at the mouth. So people that have this center activated and are standing in the line at the grocery store can have people just vomit their whole life to them just because they're activating their non-activated throat center. So this center is very powerful in many different ways, and when truly learned how to hone in the power of that, it can be extraordinary.
And that's one of the reasons why this duo of you and I work so great in this podcast, is because I have it activated, and I mean, you've said that I've asked the right questions to pull out the information from you.
Yes, exactly, and that's the way I'm designed. I'm designed to answer questions rather than really just give speeches. And so with Aaron and I sitting about approximately 4 feet from each other here, he helps to activate and actually give my throat strength. So typically by myself, I have anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half of strength in talking. But normally with someone with an activated throat chakra, such as Aaron, I can go on for a few hours. And so we actually give each other energy. And when it's exchanged in the right way, there's not a loss on one side and a gain. It's a reciprocation.
All right, so we're going to go north to the mind center.
Yeah, so the mind center, when it is activated, typically these people work well within the confines of our educational system. Typically, they can function at high levels of linear thinking, and that just fits into the way our government was designed, the way our school systems was designed, and typically they have a strong memory. Some people's is long-term, some people's is short-term. But that's why they typically resonate with our school system, because our school system is built around memorization as opposed to experiences. And so the open mind center or white center when it's white means that that energy is open and flowing. So I have the mind center as white, and I really struggled through the whole school system. I was a C student at best and never really had a subject that lit me up. But once I got into metaphysics and consciousness, I studied more than I ever had in my life and read more. So it's all about stimulating the person with a non-activated mind with the right subject, and then allowing them to just soak it in. So I trained myself coming from a Western astrology of being what's called a triple Virgo. Virgos can be very perfectionist, and I had to work a long time on letting that perfection go because it was getting in the way of me being able to be creative because I was always thinking. So for me personally, it changed my whole life when I learned to empty my mind and to trust that the answer will come to me if it's the right person in the right time in the right place in the right duration, rather than me having to stress out about remembering everything. So once again, neither way is better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah, and that's interesting, and because society always talks about like a left brain, right brain, and usually they're like, you only use one of these more than the other. But I've always wondered why I'm really good at linear like coding stuff, but I'm also really creative. And I guess the combination of everything, having the mind center activated, but also having threes in my profile, I guess is that where that balance comes from.
Yes, absolutely. So, there is, of course, many different types of creativity. And so just having that mind center like activated or not activated certainly doesn't dictate whether someone is creative, because that's why we're talking about the different, whether it's the profile or whether it's your type, or we'll get into the gates and channels. All of these different subjects are like ingredients to a pie. It makes the whole pie better when all the ingredients are there. But if you take one or so out, it doesn't necessarily ruin the pie. It just makes it enhances it, so to say. So all of these different points are important, but they do have different degrees of importance, if you will. And that helps when one's learning about themselves to not just see it so black and white and just so linearly, but to use the structure of linear to help to study. But while we're learning, even in a linear way, to at the same time be open to information coming in that may not be on the page. So this is how a person learns to learn about themselves and how to put all of these pieces together for that ultimate pie.
And finally, the crown center at the top of the head.
So the crown center, when it's activated, it typically means that this person will continue to follow some type of dogma. And of course, none of these statements are 100% all of the time. But many times what happens is whatever the religion or the spiritual path that this person has grown into, they just tend to follow it, not necessarily questioning it so much. There's nothing right or wrong with that. And then people with that center not activated or white typically means that, they're more open to many different ways, many different types of religions and spiritual paths. And so once again, in a relationship, this can sometimes cause conflict if one is more dogmatic than the other. But understand, even when I use the term dogmatic, I don't mean it negative in any way, because when someone believes something as their truth, it is truly that. It is their truth. So it can be more challenging to move one's perception or the way they're looking at it when they have the mind center and the crown center activated, to where with the mind center and the crown center white or not activated, those people sometimes can be misjudged as flighty or indecisive, a little too open. So hopefully in this description of all of these different parts of this system, and there is more to go, we will see that once again there is no center or gate or type that is better than anything else. And if we all truly work together, we could be a phenomenal community by pulling on people's strengths and helping to build their weaknesses. And we're just here to teach and share with each other. In coming to a close of this introduction, we do get into, gates and channels, which is another aspect or flavor to this. And basically, two gates make a channel, and the gates are connected to the planets. And so this is where some of the planetary influence comes in. And it makes your own specific kind of pie, if you will. And once again, not to compare. It's really to help people see our differences. So hopefully this can aid to help people to understand that we all are very different, but we're similar at the same time. And so if we can quit focusing on all of these differences and learn to shine where we're strong and learn to be humble where we're weak, this is the whole basic idea of the information behind this podcast and this frequency-based philosophy, is to help each other grow and to shine, like I said, in our strengths, to take advantage and defer when there's someone around that carries that strength, and then to be ready and be prepared when we step into a situation or an environment to where our strength shines. And hopefully we can learn to love each other's individuality.
One of my favorite things about this system is the ability to see what is happening when you get close to another person. And a lot of people will say, I feel so free around this person, or I feel this, I feel creative, I feel like I can speak my truth. And, for me personally, this gives a visual representation of what is actually happening on an energetic scale.
Yes, and it helps to clear up so many communication problems. Say, for instance, you have a manifesting generator which can create anything that they want in their life. If they want a new job, they go and they create it. They want a new hobby, they go and they create it because they have so much energy. But then if they have a projector or reflector child, the projectors and reflectors don't have motors themselves. They don't have that self-motivating inclination like that manifesting generator parent. So they can get misjudged as lazy, especially if they say they have a brother or sister that is a manifesting generator like mom or dad. Then that becomes the favorite child just because of the communication. So this helps to resolve that, like, children aren't out there just being belligerent like so many parents think. There are literally those that need others to have the energy to make things happen. And those are the projectors and reflectors. But their great skill is managing people because they're sensitive to feel everyone's needs and everyone's strengths and where to put them. So once again, any place that there is a deficiency, there is an abundance, and vice versa. So it all equals out in the wash. But my hope is that this changes the way that we interact with our mates, with our family, our children, our parents, even to understand that especially when you can see that a parent or a child is a completely different type than you. Right away it can change the communication and the comprehension of that relationship. And once you change the intention and the perception, then wellness and healing can happen.
So in closing, if this has made somebody's mouth water or curiosity peak, how can they get in touch with you to get a reading or get their chart?
Yeah, so I do give these readings, and with the human design, it is a reading, and I normally do include the other system as well. I do sell reports with the other system, the Destiny card system, the numerology, for $25. That gives you a yearly layout of your whole year and the influences that are going to be available. So you can contact me at www.vibrotune.com, VIBROTUNE, to set up an appointment. There's a sessions tab on there, and you can contact me and we can set up a time to do it over phone. Normally I like to have a minimum of 90 minutes, 90 minutes to 2 hours, but if someone wants just a 30-minute or a 1 hour reading, I'm interested in providing that as well. So there are many avenues. My phone number is on my website, emails on my website. So please contact me even through the Wise. Of course, constantly checking that in any emails or contacts that come through there as well.
And one last thing, Alexander, what would be some examples of situations where somebody would want to get one of these reports and readings?
Okay, really anyone that's struggling in their intimate relationships, especially, they feel like they just can't communicate, or they just want to communicate at a deeper level and understand their partner deeper, because understand that we need to love people the way they want to be loved, not the way we want to love them. So one of the most loving things to do is to understand a person and love them and communicate with them the way they were designed to. And so whether this is your child, this can help tremendously with children, especially people that have multiple kids, because you can't raise, well, you can. If you raise the children the same, you get different results with all of them. And this helps break it down of why, to show on a visual that, oh, you've got a generator kid, a manifestor kid, and a projector kid. If that hypothetical happens to a family, they are going to be very different in the way that they receive and interact with the family. And I worked with a lady in Sweden that had that layout, and between 4 kids, her husband and herself, they had 4 out of the 5 types. So we covered all of them, and a few weeks later, she sent me a message saying how much better everything was since we'd gone through that. So whether it's intimate relationships, understanding toward forgiveness, like people that have issues with their parents. If you can find out their birth information and you can see this on a visual once again, it can help people with forgiveness. And forgiveness is a big part of wellness and working towards true healing. So even in working environments, I can go in and work with anybody that has employees or manages multiple people and just give them a few pointers of how to bring a situation to each individual differently to get quicker results. Because my whole concept is, if you're interested in communicating with people, then you don't carry a preference of how you say or do it. And I was hung up on this for a long time. I was over 10 or 15 years ago, I was really set on, I've got a way to give my message and I'm going to give it, and the people that get it, and the people that don't, just don't. And that was my truth for a while. And then I realized that, no, it's my responsibility to find the different ways that people receive energy. And I learned this through being a guitar and bass teacher, and seeing that with every student, if I truly wanted to be a good teacher, I had to change my lesson up for every student and teach it in a different way, because they were at a different age, at a different skill level. And so my interest as a teacher started way back then, is finding out how people learn. And this is a great system to help introduce that. So I welcome you guys. Please contact me, and let's grow this understanding of one another.
We appreciate your interest in self-growth, conscious communication, and continuing to ask the wise.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
The information in this podcast has been developed over 20 years by Alexander in his observation of his personal life, private practice, and professional environments. This information is meant for educational purposes only and is not suggested as a replacement for traditional therapies or medications. As a matter of fact, we suggest to not believe any of this information, nor any of the information out there in the world. Remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We are looking forward to continuing to provide this information through this platform, and if you are drawn to support us, you can do so by the following. Sharing is caring. Share the podcast with like-minded individuals. Emotional responsibility and energetic wisdom can save the world. If you are drawn to support us monetarily, you can do so by visiting our Patreon page, where you can make a monthly donation in exchange for exclusive Wise perks. You can do this by visiting wise-wise.com/patron, Patreon. Next, you can head over to Alexander's website, where you can book private consultations in person, by phone, or on Skype. Find out more information on his live performances, class schedules, products, including birth chart analysis reports and music, and check out more information on his sound therapy tables. To do so, you can visit vibrotune.com, vibrotune.com. Finally, if you have been searching your entire life for consciously created apparel featuring the Wise logo apparel, Alexander themed clothing, or other alternative perspective designs, you can head over to Verities Apparel, where you can find all that and more. That is veritiesapparel.com, VERITEESAPPAREL.com. We want to thank you for being part of this journey.